People who have survived an attempted murder, what is your story? Had a girl cut my brake lines on my car. Didn't know until we checked the camera from the apartment complex. Luckily she cut straight through them vs slitting them. When I attempted to crank the car, the brake pedal went straight to the floor and I immediately knew something was wrong. Random dude shot me in the chest because he thought I was my drug dealer neighbor. My neighbor was 6'3" and black. I'm 5'11" and white. Jokes on him. All he got were a few cigarettes, some pocket change, and 35 years on an attempted second-degree homicide conviction. Dang, what does getting shot in the chest feel like? Honestly, at first like nothing. I was in total shock, couldn't feel a thing. After that wore off, though, it burned like hell. I could actually feel the path the bullet took through my chest cavity. My older sister tried to stab me with a large knife in an attempt to kill me on my 16th birthday. My mother grabbed the knife off her before it got my stomach and slammed her against the fridge and yelled at me to run. Last time I saw my older sister she said, "I've gotten over it and you should too. It's pathetic to hang on to it." She then told people it was self-defense because I tried to hurt her. I was literally eating my birthday breakfast. I didn't sleep properly for 2 years while she was in the house because she constantly tried to break into my room at night to slit my throat while I slept. I hate her. I delivered a pizza to a house just outside of the city. On the way back, I stopped to help a car that pulled over in front of me with their hazard lights on. I pulled up beside them and thought it was weird that nobody rolled down a window or made any kind of contact with me for around 15 seconds. The passenger then jumped out of his side of the car yelling that they needed help as he made his way toward my car. I thought something was weird about this. As I started to pull away, before he could get to my passenger door, he began shooting at me. I ducked my head after the first shot entered through the back window and embedded in my passenger seat headrest. Another shot entered through the rear window, while the other 3 only hit the outside metal parts of my car. He missed altogether with another shot. I remember being sure I was about to die as he fired more shots at me. I was very surprised that it wasn't panicky. It was just like, oh, I guess this is it. Turns out it was a plot to rob me. The pizza was ordered and the guys were stationed down the road to intercept me. They knew who I was and they knew that I would be able to recognize them as I had delivered a few orders to them before. The guy wasn't wearing anything to cover his identity, which leads me to believe that he would have shot and killed me if he would have made it inside my car. By the next morning they had all been arrested. The shooter was found guilty of attempted murder and sentenced to 40 years in prison. He later appealed that sentencing because there was a word wrong in the jury instructions. He won the appeal and ended up being sentenced to 10 years and was released November of 2010 after 5 years. The remaining 5 years were to be served as parole/probation. He was arrested twice for parole/probation violation when he was only a couple months away from total freedom. I laughed. TLDR, some people tried to murder me for pizza money. They shot. They missed. They got caught. They did time, but not enough, then did more. I feel like I'm very late to the party, but my uncle was attempted murdered by random and pure bad luck. He was living in a high-rise and some crackhead pressed every single buzzer. Someone let him in out of laziness/not caring/wanting the buzzer to stop. The crackhead proceeded to knock on every single door down the hallways and my uncle is the first to answer the door. The crackhead pulls out a pair of scissors and plunges them into his throat. The crackhead then nonchalantly walks out of the building and says to a passing couple, "You should probably call the police because I just murdered someone." He was picked up very quickly and my uncle survived for a year or two before his epilepsy killed him. Edit: in addition, it was a very small world as my uncle went to school with this crackhead 30 years earlier and knew his name to identify him. Not that there needed any more evidence in the case. My parents moved to Mozambique during the mid-90s. I was around 8 at the time and started going to school there, a nice private one, can't complain. My father was working for the Red Cross in Chimoio, so we had a comfortable life. One day, before arriving to school with a friend of mine, some sketchy guy stopped us, offered a whole bunch of money to just take some small box to a white van that was parked at the end of the street, not even 100 meters away. My lucky day, I guessed. It actually was, but for different reasons. When I was going to go grab the box, my friend grabbed me by the shirt, pushed me, and started running, screaming, something I didn't understand in Shona, the local dialect. That moment was when it clicked. The moment I looked back, the guy had already vanished. So, wherever you are, thank you, Chude. I will never forget you. Damn, was he trying to kidnap you? Organ traffic. When I was a kid, probably around 2nd grade, our house got robbed, and my mom and I came home while it was in progress. For whatever reason, she decided to go in and interrupt them. She grabbed her gun, didn't shoot, yelled at them to get the fuck out of my house, and then we drove off in a hurry to the corner store to call the cops. This was before cell phones. Less than 2 weeks later, my mom and I are sitting in the living room on the couch, our backs to the front door. Someone drives by and fires about 6 or 8 shots into the front of our house. Thank God for a steel front door. The cops came and said they didn't think the two incidents were related. This happened a couple weeks ago. It was 4 AM on a Monday night, playing Rust with some friends and my curtains were slightly open. All of a sudden I hear a loud pop and my monitor jumps and starts smoking. The screen is completely fucked, like I had thrown it on the ground, and I was utterly confused as to what happened. Turns out someone was looking for someone to hurt. When they saw me through the window, they thought they had found their victim. A .22 pistol bullet was shot through my window at my chest, and was stopped by my monitor. Who knows how long I was aimed at, or why they wanted to hurt someone. All I know is I got really lucky, and I should send a thank you card to SS. Neighbor stabbed me in the chest because I hit him over the head twice with a 10-pound weight to try to stop him stabbing his wife. However, I'm fat and the knife didn't go deep enough through my breast tissue to do any damages. Yay for being fat. He's still up for attempted murder though. How did his wife do? Not so well, unfortunately, but she's alive. It wasn't me but my uncle. When I was a kid, around a decade ago, my uncle got shot while coming out of a bar with a few friends. His friend got hit once in his shoulder but was fine. My uncle, on the other, got hit 3 times. Once in the colon, lung, and heart. By all rights the shooter had gotten him and drove away. His friends rushed him to the hospital, and, with a bullet lodged in his heart and blood entering his lung, he managed to survive. He was in a lot of pain for a long time, but since then he's gotten his life together, and is getting married in about a year. Edit. I appreciate all the shot through the heart puns, Mayo. Keep 'em coming, if you have more. So I had seizures when I was younger, so the fact that I remember this is amazing to me. My dad was driving my sisters and I to the new home he and my mother had just purchased like a few weeks before, when a woman who had wanted to commit suicide drove head on in my dad's lane. I remember him switching to the opposite lane a few times and each time the woman would switch as well, still driving straight for our car. We didn't get hit and cops were called and explained that the woman was trying to kill herself. I don't know what happened to the woman, but I mean I lived. My family and I didn't have any injuries, but we were pretty shaken up. I was 13. My mother was screaming, legit screaming, not the yelling that a lot of people call screaming. They're different, trust me, at me because I made a tuna sandwich for lunch and didn't make one for her. She was a courier and I never knew when she would be home and when she wouldn't. These were the days before everyone had a cell phone and she frequently bought lunch on the road. I was done with lunch before she got home, but she still flipped. I was selfish, a horrible daughter, etc. Anyway, as she was screaming, I was backing away from her until I was pressed against the sink cabinet. She kept coming towards me. I swear to God, before I knew what was happening or could process/register, she had the scissors out of the knife block in her hand and she was still coming towards me, scissor points directed at me. I screamed bloody murder. My brother came rushing out of his room, right off the kitchen, as she started swinging them down at my throat. He caught her hand maybe 2 inches away from my skin, and she was coming at me with enough force that there was still some forward momentum for him to counter. If he had not been there, they would have been buried in my throat. To this day, she doesn't understand why I have nothing to do with her, and the closest thing I've ever received to an apology was "I'm sorry you're not over that." Yeah. She's since been diagnosed as a narcissistic sociopath. Imagine my utter lack of surprise. My brother is a drug addict, and he held my dad and I hostage saying he was going to kill us after he pulled out a gun. He fired it at the upper wall/ceiling at first to show us it was a real gun, and my mom was by the front door and able to run out. I wasn't 100% sure he noticed I was still inside, so I had run into the only room that locked, which was the bathroom, and hid behind the toilet. I eventually let him know my location by begging him to let us go, and we wouldn't call the police. He said he'd drag me out by the hair and shoot me first if my dad didn't give him any money. Eventually, my dad had convinced him there was money in the basement that my mom had hidden, and I ran out the front door. It was a single-level house. My mom was on the phone with the police from a neighbor's house. What was scariest is that we were in a pretty rural area that had turkey hunting in the woods behind us. I heard a shot from the woods and assumed it was my brother murdering my dad. I had lived in a lot of fear up until that point anyway, because my brother was generally violent and scary. Took me a long time to be healthy again. I'm kind of a small person, but I still managed to lose a ton of weight and still haven't been able to sleep well. It's been almost 13 years. My parents wouldn't let me tell the truth on the police report, so I didn't write anything out or sign anything. My brother wonders now why I can't look at him or why he couldn't hug me on my wedding day. Edit. Thanks everyone for the show of support. I'm sorry I didn't make it clear while I was writing this out, but my dad was not killed in this incident. Once it was just the two of them, and you could hear the sirens approaching. My dad was able to talk my brother out of it. Also, I'm a woman. A lot of people have assumed I'm a man. I know it's easy to blame my parents for enabling my brother's behavior, because I often do it myself, but this situation is very difficult for them too. We didn't have a lot growing up, but they loved us a crazy amount. They were the type of parents who would scrimp and save in order to take us to McDonald's for our birthdays, but not eat anything there themselves, because we couldn't afford it. They definitely spoiled us with their love, and they don't deserve the amount of suffering they've experienced trying to help my brother. They didn't realize that they were enabling him at the time, although they understand now, but their goal has always been to save him. Addiction is an incredibly difficult and complex issue. I don't understand why you weren't allowed to tell the truth to the police. They wanted him to get help instead of go to jail. He ended up going to jail, but it wasn't very long. They bailed him out. He pleaded to something minor. He's been in rehab a few times. Not me, but my mother. Context: we were already independent. She lived alone with 2 dogs. And burglar break into in her house. He tried to torture her with small cuts with the knife he had. When she screamed, the dogs, 2 beautiful 80kg/160 pound Rottweilers, defended her. The delinquent was left with facial skin tearing, skull sinking, multiple fractures in one of the arms. We had to hire a specialized cleaning service to remove the smell of blood. I posted this story already a long while back, but basically, I worked in a jail and a guy from a 1%er biker gang tried to pay $10,000 to have me killed because he somehow got the idea that I was the Fed who busted him and was merely pretending to be a jailer so I could spy on him. Don't do meth, kids. The guy was bragging about it, and one of the other inmates who I had saved from a heart attack with first aid didn't like that, so he beat the living shit out of the guy and then told me about it. Phone call recordings confirmed that he had promised the money to 2 guys if they shot me in the back of the head while escorting him to court and busted him out. Federal marshals rolled them up, and on his way to court I whispered to him, your friends won't be joining us. When we got to the planned ambush point, instead of a bond hearing he got charged for trying to have me murdered and organizing an escape. Did the inmate who informed you on the potential killer get any reward? He was in for drug issues. I got him enrolled in a treatment program, and the county attorney agreed to drop other charges that weren't drug related in order for him to attend. Dude, you're the freaking man for that. Probably influenced his life quite positively, if not completely changed it. Much respect for what you do. When I was 6 years old I saw my BO dad stab my BO mom 20 times in front of my little brother and I. He took my BO mom's blood and rubs it on my brother's face and said, this is your mother's blood. She almost died right in front of us. They got her to the hospital in enough time to save her life. But I was scary, and I remember everything. He only went to jail for 8 years. He claimed he heard demons telling him to do it. Not my story, but grandmother's friend was getting picked up from work by her husband when he shot at her 5 times. He missed 4 times and the 5th bullet hit the underwire of her bra. He then turned the gun around and killed himself. He had just been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. She's alive and was completely uninjured. She now jokes about how bad of a shot he was to miss that many times. Crazy ass story. A little bit of background. Here we use Telegram to buy drugs. We have this big group with lots of dealers. Very sorted, very handy. So I just got home from college and parked my car on the street. It was about 2300 hours and I was just sitting and browsing my phone. At some point I got into Telegram to read some work related messages when suddenly a guy opens the passenger door and tries to get in. I'm trying to push him out and he's like, shh, you better not, and points to the driver's window where another guy was standing pointing a gun at me. He gets into the car and from the back another guy comes in, so now there's 3 of them, one on the passenger seat, one by the driver's window which by now opened the door and putting the gun to my head, and another who was sitting in the back and was pointing a knife to my neck. At first I got really confused and I was like, what the fuck guys? The guy next to me started talking about money I owe them and started searching my car. I told them they are mistaken, and he was like, I saw you browsing Telegram, so don't shit me. At that point from some reason I got really calm, as I do not do drugs and I don't owe nobody money. I tried to explain that I was just reading work messages, but the guy with the gun got really mad and hit me with the gun. He tried to pull me out and the dude next to me stopped him and said there's an easy way to check, so he took my phone and started going through everything. At some point he got into my messages with my mom, my little sister. He was checking where do I work. He got into the gallery and found pictures of my dog, and that's when I worried the most. He said to his friends, look how cute his dog is, ain't it? You love your dog, do you? And I didn't reply. Few minutes later and he finds nothing. Then he explains me that they supplied some guy 4k worth of weed and he never paid. Next he says sorry and they're off. TLDR, I was sitting in my car when 3 armed men jumped in thinking I owe them drug money. I wasn't. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and like for more future content.